Hello, I'm Simon Meadows and I'd like to welcome you to Marketforce and Yodlee's Customer Experience and Digital Banking webinar. As I'm sure you're aware, digital banking has become a primary focus for all the major retail banks in recent years. Today, mobile and online channels are often the most effective ways of engaging customers on their own terms and at their own convenience. Advances in technology, such as the recent dominance of smartphones and the emergence of tablets, is changing the way that we communicate, leading to a world where everybody is connected 24/7. Banks need to catch up, though. This is a theme that we'll be thinking about throughout today's webinar. Digital banking is not just about online banking. Digital banking also signifies the integration of new platforms with traditional channels, in particular mobile. It also encompasses apps, social media, and personal finance management tools. All of these tools can be used to deepen the customer experience and to put the customer at the heart of a bank's proposition. Effective use of these digital tools can act as a differentiator, helping banks to become more competitive. We'll be looking at digital banking holistically, keeping the customer at the heart of the discussion. We'll also look at strategies to cater for an increasingly diverse and sophisticated body of consumers. But before we kick off the discussion, let me introduce our panellists here today. Joining me at the London Stock Exchange is, to my left, Justine Howarth, who is Head of Digital Strategy and Design for HSBC Retail Banking in the UK. Justine is responsible for driving the design and delivery of best-in-class internet and mobile channel experiences for HSBC, Marks & Spencer Money and First Direct brands. With over 15 years' experience, we're looking forward to her insights as an innovator and to hearing about her hands-on experience in responding to changing customer attitudes and expectations for the most successful digital banks in the market. Justine, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Now, Ian Morgan is Head of Financial Services at Google UK. Google, of course, is synonymous with the digital space, but perhaps less so with financial services. However, Ian has been building relationships with key players across the full range of FS industries, offering the benefit of Google's experience and insight. Welcome to you too, Ian. Thank you. Our next guest is from the sponsor of today's webinar, Yodlee, who provide personal finance management or PFM tools, often touted as the next frontier in the digital mix. Jason O'Shaughnessy heads up Yodlee's operations in the EMEA region. Jason, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Last but not least, we have Daoud Fakhri, who is a retail banking analyst from Market Research Analyst's Data Monitor. Daoud works with banking clients across the retail banking sector, providing them with insights into digital banking, amongst other things. Daoud, thank you for joining us too. Now, let's start the debate. Over the course of the next hour, we'll be discussing how best to build a digital banking strategy, including the critical success factors and potential challenges. This webinar also aims to give you the opportunity to ask questions and share your ideas. As part of this, we'll be conducting a couple of short polls during the course of the webinar. You can find these on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll announce the results live and get the panellists' feedback. If you wish to join in the discussion on Twitter, please follow at MarketforceB and use the hashtag CEFS. So let's get started with Justine first. Justine, as a successful online bank, could you share with us the core principles of a customer-focused digital strategy?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you know, at HSBC we've spent an awful lot of time talking to our customers, talking with market experts and sort of really working to understand what's important for customers as they embark on their digital journey and they start using the digital bank. And I suppose for me, you know, the 4 customer strategies that we employ, you know, within my team and within the broader organisation, you know, centre on delivering a channel experience that's easy, that's quick, that's reassuring and that's relevant. And so to bring those to life, add a little bit of colour to those. You know, what do I mean by easy? Well, that sort of boils down to things like navigation. findability, usability of the digital services. Ease also incorporates mobile, actually, which actually links into the, anytime, any place, anywhere attitude and expectations that we're sort of, increasingly we're seeing, across our digital customer base. Speed is about doing things quickly. Obviously, digital is a component of a multi-channel mix for HSBC in particular, which includes call centre and branch. But increasingly, customers want to do more online, more on mobile, and it's really important that we respond to that and we actually give them, processes and experiences that allow them to complete the tasks that they want to do almost immediately. Reassurance really is around a couple of areas. One is around security, so giving customers the reassurance that the digital bank is safe and that they can actually interact with any of the brands in the HSBC family with a level of certainty and reassurance. But it also covers help as well. Often we sort of expect our digital customers to log on and to find their way around, and we sort of assume that it's simple and straightforward because we've designed it. But actually, what our customers tell us is that there are occasions when they do need help, and that takes a number of guises. That might be just your straightforward FAQ type help, but it could be things like something that's much more interactive, like an avatar, and beyond that it might be something that actually connects a customer out to the contact centre, or in some cases even a branch if they're doing some sort of financial appointment. And then the last one, as I say, is relevance. It's important for the digital bank to make the customer feel as though they're unique, and that means displaying to them within the digital bank things that are of interest to them, whether that's a sales or service promotion, and allowing them to act on that with ease and speed. So, those are essentially the 4 strategies that are at the heart of the thinking that we do as we look to drive out best-in-class channel experience design. We've got a strong pedigree in that space. Obviously, with brands like First Direct and Marks and Spencer Money, we see very, very good customer satisfaction arising from that. But beyond that, everything that we do is usability tested before we launch. So in some instances, we actually co-create with customers to do that. And actually, once we've gone live, we actually measure what customer reaction is, and we use that to continually improve what we do.
Excellent, Justine. Thank you very much for your insight on that. Ian, how much does that chime with Google's experience and the businesses that you're working with?
Very much so. I think Google prides itself on being very customer focused. Indeed, our goal is to continually create products that our users love and value and want to use on a regular basis. And I guess so committed are we to that goal that a great number of the products that we deliver are actually launched before we even think about how we're going to monetize them. And our basic premise there is if users can experience them, grow to love them, and it becomes valuable within their lives, then we can always think of ways in which we can monitor them afterwards. So we are truly customer focused in that respect. But a lot of the points that Justine were mentioning I think are highly salient. But I guess the 2 key things, if you speak to most organizations and ask them, are you customer focused? 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10, they'll say, yes, we're customer focused. But I think that the 2 key things are that, having a customer focused strategy, it needs to be baked into the DNA of pretty much every employee within that organization so that they truly think customer first. And then secondly, of course, it's always got to be about execution. So you don't pay lip service to that. So it has to be reflected in the way in which you engage with customers, how you develop your products, how you service those customers. And that can be achieved by a number of the things that Justine has talked about there. So it's as much of a cultural thing, I think, as it is anything else.
And of course, we all learn from each other in business. So how much do you think that, in terms of creating a customer-focused digital strategy, that we can learn from online retail?
I think we can learn a lot. I guess, what retail are doing particularly well are not thinking in terms of channel silos. So, we're the theme of today is digital banking. However, the customer doesn't view the bank in terms of channels of distribution. It doesn't think branch, telephony, mobile, and internet. It thinks, what is the overall service that I'm getting from my bank provider, and does it meet my needs? And increasingly in the retail space, we're seeing that. So, a lot of the retailers are now sort of making sure that there's seamless integration between their digital channels and their offline branch or store footprint. And retailers, big retailers like M&S and John Lewis and so on and so forth, are very adept at that. And I think that the banking community can learn quite a lot from that, because although there are a number of good examples now where banks have got some really good, sort of mobile propositions and good digital propositions, I think essentially where they're perhaps behind other industry sectors is that how they're integrating digital into the overall distribution and marketing mix, and making it a very integrated and seamless process for the customer. Because I think most banks would probably have to hold their hand up and say at the moment it's still a bit broken in places, very disjointed as far as the customer is concerned. So I think in that respect banking can learn quite a bit from the retail sector.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ian. What about you, Jason? What advice do you offer your clients about who are either trying to create or expand their digital offering?
Well, when we deal with banking customers, it's around deploying PFM solutions. And part of deploying a PFM solution is how it integrates within the online banking environment. And to make PFM successful, it needs to be integrated into the online channel. It can't be a separate entity. So part of that is, how do you create a PFM solution that's going to work within the online channel at the moment? Because typically online banking is an extension of their legacy systems. There's not much clever going on there. Yes, I can service my accounts, I can see my balance and my transactions, but it's very much, this is a replication of my legacy system. So looking at a PFM tool, which is now going to give you, I suppose, tools and functionality which you haven't had before, how do you implement that into the online banking environment and cater for things like the changing marketplace over the next 12, 24 months? You need to be able to move quickly with that. And so if you choose a tool that you can't change with the times, that's going to be problematic. If you put a tool in that isn't easy to use, that's going to be difficult. So, consumer experience has got to be an easy to use experience. And then lastly, putting something in place that you can use across the whole banking platform. So you've launched something for retail, but I also want to be able to use this for my small to medium business customers, my high net worth customers, and so on and so forth.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jason. Daoud, let's bring you in here. How much do the views of your fellow panellists reflect the research that you've done?
I think they'll all be pleased to hear that the results of our consumer research pretty much back up what they've been saying. We carried out a survey last year amongst UK consumers, and I think the overwhelming message we got from that was that there needs to be a real focus on getting the basics right. So just to reiterate what Justine was saying about usability, I think it comes down to three separate factors. I think simplicity, flexibility, and immediacy. So if we look at immediacy, it all comes down to being able to do things when you want and where you want. And I think there is still areas where banks are sort of falling down a little bit. So, for example, it may still take several working days to transfer money from one provider to another. And I think consumers are finding that increasingly unacceptable in this day and age. In terms of flexibility, I think this comes back to what Ian was saying about multi-channel integration. I think consumers are becoming increasingly channel neutral, channel agnostic, whatever you want to call it. But they want to be able to start a transaction or a particular interaction in one channel, pick it up in another, and complete it in yet another. And at the moment, I think for reasons around maybe legacy IT issues, I think banks are having a bit of difficulty at the moment in being able to fulfill that demand. And I think the other thing was simplicity. I think, again, just goes back to the usability issue. I think it can be still surprisingly difficult for consumers to carry out just basic activities such as setting up new bill payees or being able to search for particular transactions. I still think that can be a very clunky experience. So I do think there is a role for banks to be able to lift their game in that area.
And so there is a need, you think, for banks to put as much focus on this area as other parts of their business, clearly?
Yes, and I think historically the branch has always taken the lion's share of attention and operating costs, but I think that is now starting to change, and it's a well-established trend that routine activities, so paying bills, moving money between accounts, checking balances and so on, that is largely already moved to online channels and increasingly to mobile channels. So I think in terms of those basic transactional activities, which are the most frequent calls for contact between bank and customer, that has already moved to those remote digital channels. But having said that, there is obviously still a role for branches in terms of servicing more complex needs, such as applying for mortgages and other complex products.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Daoud. So now's a chance for you to get involved as we conduct our first quick live poll. You can see the question on the right-hand side of your screen. You can also vote there. So here is the question. By 2015, will the mobile channel be the most significant channel that customers use for their banking activity? It's a simple yes or no vote. So vote now, and we'll look at the results with our panellists in just a few minutes. Now, we often hear terms such as Generation X, Generation Y, and now Generation LOL. That's one that David Cameron knows a lot about, of course. They're often bandied about, and we also have Silver Surfers, for whom age is no barrier to engagement with new technologies. Is it useful, then, to think about how these different demographics come into play when designing digital strategies? Justine, what's your take on this? How much do you think about demographics when you're developing a strategy?
Well, I think there are sort of two components to that question, actually. So the straightforward answer to the question is yes, we do think about demographics when we are thinking about designing digital propositions. So, we need to be cognizant of the fact that there are certain digital propositions that are probably more relevant to certain demographics than others. So, for example, a stocks and shares portfolio manager type tool may be more relevant to, someone who is beyond 30 years old, for example, than it might be towards an 18-year-old, accepting that there are clearly 18-year-old entrepreneurs in existence. So we need to think about that dynamic. But I think the secondary dimension to me is actually, if you look at attitudes and expectations to digital technology and digital channel experience, the digital personas actually transcend the marketing personas and the customer segment personas. So from a channel experience design perspective, the principles that we uphold, the way that we design channel experience actually is applicable to any marketing segment. So we can have a particular tool or a particular service that can be designed in a certain way, and it's going to resonate with all of the marketing segments. And all of the customer segments, but the way that we perhaps promote it and the features of the service that we promote to the different marketing segments might be slightly different. But for me, good design is actually good design, and our challenge is to ensure that for any given proposition that we either create ourselves or we're asked to implement within HSBC, that we apply good design principles to that, which come back to being easy, being quick, being reassuring, and being relevant.
Okay, well, Ian, I'd like to bring you in on this. Google, of course, is a brand that internet users of every age are engaged with. So do you use a segmentation strategy, or is personalisation and the individual user experience more important?
More so the latter, really. I mean, we would hold more faith in what customers are actually doing rather than what they say they're going to do, and so therefore we rely less upon segmentation. And if you think from a search perspective, search is an excellent barometer to understand what customers are actually interested in and what they're searching on. There's billions of searches made every day of the year, so pretty quickly we can build up a really good understanding about what people are interested in and how we can serve those needs best. So it's more around what customers are actually doing rather than what they say they're doing. And I think the digital environment allows any organisation to be able to react on that basis more effectively than they have done previously. Because, you know, if you take the number of times that a customer would transact with a bank or have an interface with a bank now via digital channels, it's considerably more than it would be if it was just a branch network. I think, the statistics it will vary from bank to bank, but roughly about 2/3 of customers will only visit a bank branch perhaps once a month or something like that. Whereas if they're banking online or if they're banking via their mobile devices, typically they've got an interaction with a bank daily, perhaps 2 or 3 times a day. So that gives you a far better understanding about, how the customer is interfacing with a bank, what they want from you, and so on and so forth. And that allows you to develop a profile of how you can meet those needs more effectively. And of course, within the digital environment, it lends itself to more personalised marketing. So rather than relying upon segmentation, you can understand on a one-to-one basis what it is that you need to do to be able to satisfy the requirements of an individual consumer based on their activity on digital and based on the number of touch points that they're having with your bank in any given week or any given month.
Interesting. Thank you very much. We'll come to you guys for your views in a second, but let's just consider for a moment digital natives. Young people are often described as digital natives, a term that describes people who've grown up with social media and network sites, but who also take an entrepreneurial approach to using social media and new technology. Sites like Instagram and Pinterest being prime examples of this. So what I'd like to ask you, Jason, first of all, and you, Daoud, is how you think that digital banking needs to evolve to keep pace with those who have grown up with it, are very accustomed to online.
Yeah, I think extending on the answer I was giving earlier on around turning the online channel into more like the sites that consumers visit all the time. So making the online channel for online banking more similar to how I interact online, whether that be mobile, whether it be the online channel. One of those things which I've mentioned before is Yodlee have created this whole concept of FinApps, basically financial applications widgets, which by making those available in the online channel and by giving users the ability to have more, flexibility on the types of tools they can use when they're using their online banking environment is quite a powerful component. So, for example, there's no reason why a bank using my data can't provide tools that help me understand how I manage my money, but more importantly, help me save by, maybe they see I've got 2 credit cards and I can consolidate those credit cards and give me a loan. It's a lower APR. So I'm winning as a consumer. So more tools, more services that the bank can deliver to me online and through the mobile channel is a really powerful thing for me as a consumer.
Very quick reaction from you, Daoud, because we have to go to the poll, but what's your reaction?
I suppose I would be striking a note of caution here. I mean, going back to my earlier point, I think banks need to be able to walk before they can run. So I think before they dive into areas such as social media, they just need to focus on getting that basic user experience right. And I think in all this talk about digital natives and such like, I think it's important to realise that these still represent just a minority of the population. And I think if banks focus too much on that segment, there's a chance that they will leave behind, the bulk of the population who just aren't as engaged with that kind of, early innovation type thing. So I think banks need to sort of maybe step back and not rush into things.
OK, well, let's find out what the viewers are saying. So let's look at the results of poll number 1. Here's a reminder of the question we asked just a few minutes ago. By 2015, will the mobile channel be the most important channel that customers use for banking activity? It was a simple yes or no. It will be interesting to note for you guys here that 64% say yes, they do think that. 36% said no. What's your reaction to that? Are you surprised that 64% think yes?
No, I think if we look at sort of the market data that's available for a lot of people to consume, I think there is a view that mobile, smartphone, mobile and tablet devices are going to become increasingly important to the masses. Take on board Daoud's point that actually, today we're still in a situation where the PC channel is still the dominant channel, but over time whether it's 2015 sooner or later, I guess that's the question mark. We are potentially going to see a situation where people are using, by preference, people are going to be using mobile and tablet type channels.
Okay, I'm conscious to move the debate along, but I do want to get a very quick reaction from all of you. So, as brief as you can make it, what's your reaction to that figure?
I'm surprised insofar as it's so low a figure as 60%. I mean, I think if you bear in mind that probably by the end of next year, more people are going to be accessing the internet globally via mobile devices than they are through desktop, then that's a fairly seismic shift in terms of behaviour.
I thought it might be higher, actually. I was expecting a higher figure as well.
Yeah. So, yeah, very surprised that it isn't substantially higher than that.
Very briefly from you, Jason, and from Daoud.
Same, surprised. Every one of our customers deploying mobile services, so it's in their strategy.
And Daoud, what's your view?
Yeah, I would say certainly over a maybe 3 to 5 year timescale, mobile will certainly take over as the dominant channel for routine transactional and informational activities.
Excellent, thank you very much. Let's look at some of the different channels and features of digital banking in more detail. To start, we're going to look at the online channel and how it's evolving. How can banks develop their online offerings to support a great customer experience? So, Justine, we'll come to you first. How do you see the online channel evolving in the years to come?
Well, it's a great question, and I think, in light of the recent survey, it's, we need to consider the results. 64% of people who've responded to the survey are sort of saying, well, in the next 3 to 5 years, mobile's going to be more dominant. That raises an interesting question then about, well, what role does PC banking or online banking play within the broader digital channel mix? But again, my view to Daoud's point is that, HSBC and across its HSBC family, we've launched a number of mobile services over the last, couple of years, but we're still seeing the majority of traffic coming in through PC. So the question in my mind from a strategic perspective is actually, at what point do we start to think about an exit strategy for PC? Will PC as a channel become the channel in future where, people go to, to do a bit more in-depth research? Do they go there to write documents or, write long emails? What is the USP of the online channel from a strategic perspective, and actually how do we sort of define and deliver channel experience that plays to the PC strengths, and at the same time complement that with channel experience on mobile and tablets. And I think coming back to Ian's point as well, again, customers don't think in terms of channel. We have to, the challenge is about creating a channel experience that goes across the whole suite of channels that a financial institution offers, and actually creating that seamless, interaction, connectivity.
Okay, so Justine, thank you for your insight there. Let's just ask a more general question to the panel, really. What online banking tools do you think customers find most useful?
Probably better.
Who wants to pitch in on that one?
Being a bank, as a consumer,
yeah.
and what we see, I think accessing my transactions, transferring money, but more importantly now, I use the mobile channel so much more with my bank. So I use my mobile channel to view my accounts when I'm on the go. I'll use that more than my online channel. So for me as a consumer, that's what I tend to use more. If you look at some of our customers who are, I suppose, US, where personal finance is more dominant, their customers really get the benefit out of being able to see a breakdown of their spend or helping them plan a budget. And those types of tools, in PFM there's a wide range of tools, but those two tools are really key and important for banking customers.
Daoud, what's your view?
I suppose we can make a distinction here between what consumers deem essential in an online or a mobile service, what you might call the hygiene factors, and what could be deemed the nice-to-haves, the additional bolt-ons. And I think just to back up what Jason was saying, I think it's become a given that consumers want to be able to do just those basic transactional activities, as quickly as possible, as simply as possible. In terms of other things such as, a lot of talk, for example, about integrating social media into the whole banking experience. I think that has yet to gain traction amongst the general public. Maybe, 5-10 years down the line, that'll be a much more commonplace thing. But I think in terms of what consumers want at the moment, it's just being able to manage their everyday finances as quickly and as efficiently as possible.
Okay, Ian, very briefly, because we've got to move to the next section of debate.
Well, just to build upon Daoud's point, I totally agree that there is that hygiene factor, but I think ultimately customers just want to have access to information that allows them to make informed decisions about their financial services, and then for their bank to allow them easy accessibility for those products and services. And I think the digital channels still have quite a long way to go in terms of being able to offer that dimension of customer service to its users.
Excellent, thank you. Now, banks obviously need to keep pace with changing customer needs. The UK economy is fairly stagnant, and the average UK consumer is wrestling to keep control of their expenditure. The era of freely available credit is over, and there seems to be a genuine desire from UK consumers to be more responsible with their money. So, Ian, if we can come to you first, how can banks use the data that they collect from PFM services?
Wow, okay. Well, again, it's all about servicing the needs of the customer. If they can use all of the data points that they have for a customer to understand truly what the needs are, then it just helps the bank to be able to satisfy those needs most appropriately. As an outsider looking in, that's certainly the comment that I would make, rather than commenting specifically on PFM tools themselves.
Okay. Jason, I'm keen to obviously hear your insight into this. How much would you say that PFM can play a role in educating customers on their finances?
Well, I think it extends on the question that you asked, Ian. If you've got PFM solutions in an online banking environment, over time you're building up a much clearer picture of your customers, based upon the fact that you now know where your customers are spending their money because of the categorization capabilities you've got there. You know what people are trying to plan budgets for, so you know what they're interested in. And actually, if you introduce other tools like an aggregation platform that enables them to view all of their accounts at a single place, that gives you a much greater insight into their whole net worth picture, which as a bank gives you the ability to sell them more products at the end of the day. I mean, you know that Jason has a credit card with an APR of X at so-and-so, so therefore you can offer me a better credit card. You might not have got 3 credit cards and I can offer you a loan and reduce your payments, so therefore I'm helping you as a consumer. As a consumer, I want one place to manage everything online, so that's a powerful tool for me. Using those tools to then educate me moving forward is, as well as offering things that helping me save and improve my finances, but also helping me plan for goals, helping me actually spot trends as well. So, we have a number of examples where customers who've deployed our product, their customers will look at things and say, actually, I didn't know I was paying this amount of interest on my credit card or this amount on my loan, because it's something that they get that through the post, they probably don't open it up, they throw it in the bin. Or maybe I didn't know I spent £500 on petrol every month or £600 on restaurants. It's not my personal spend, but we do have lots of examples coming in. And then the other element of that is kind of around education, but also alerting. So, users can start to generate alerts that let them know when transactions happen on their accounts that they're unaware of. And we've had plenty of examples from existing customers who've received an alert that says there's been a transaction of, I don't know, £50 and it's at this store, and it's not them, and they may not have known that until at the end of the month when they look through their statement. So actually forewarning users and protecting them is quite a powerful product as well through the PFM whole strategy.
Daoud, what does your research indicate in this area?
Well, we asked our respondents, and nearly half of them said that their financial situation is worse now than it has been. And as a result, there's a huge degree of pent-up demand, I would say, for services from banks to help people manage their finances more effectively. I think 2/3 of those we questioned said that they were now looking to their banks to help provide them with solutions to help them manage their finances. And I think 1/3 of those we questioned said it was absolutely essential, not a nice to have, essential that banks help them to analyse their spending habits. So I think there's a huge amount of demand there for PFM type solutions, but at the moment we're the UK, it has to be said, is lagging behind other parts of the world in terms of implementing these facilities.
Fascinating. Thanks for your insight. Justine, briefly, because we have to move to the next section, but what's your take on PFM?
I actually agree with both all the viewpoints, actually. I think, the secret to successfully implementing any sort of personal financial management solution is actually tapping into the need that's here and now in the marketplace here and now, which is absolutely around the fact that customers are challenged by their day-to-day living expenses. It's hard for them to see the wood for the trees in some instances. They're crying out for help. But actually it goes beyond, it's beyond just sort of putting up a pie chart and showing them where they're spending, how much money they're spending on shoes every month. What they're actually asking for is help in managing their day-to-day money in order that they can actually create some space to plan for their future. And I think at the moment what we're seeing is a situation where it's either or, because they're so trapped by what's happening day to day. And I think sort of PFM tools in the digital arena where customers really want to be in control of their money would actually be something that's very liberating for them, as long as the financial institution, the bank, actually does something with that information to help them, so it's channeled to a specific solution or a specific goal that the customer has in mind, whether that's I want to go on holiday next year, help me save for that, or I need to top up my pension so that I've got enough to live on in 20 years time. And I think that for me is where PFM needs to play, particularly now.
Thanks, Justine. The smartphone has created a world where increasing numbers of people are never offline. The portability of smartphones allows internet access anywhere, at any time. So let's talk about the mobile channel. Justine, what's your view on that? How much is this the way forward?
Well, yeah, I think we've talked to the data. We've said that increasingly we know that across the UK adult population, more and more people are acquiring smartphones and tablet devices, and the reason that they're doing that is that those types of devices go anywhere with are portable, and they provide that that immediate connectivity.
And the demand is there. That's what you're finding.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, smartphone sales are the biggest growing sales in the mobile arena at the moment. I'm not sure what the data points are, but certainly from my perspective, I see that that channel growing in usage over the next few years, and we have to respond to that.
Ian, is the smartphone a game changer for banks, do you think?
Mobile devices are a game changer for banks. I mean, you only have to look at the statistics in terms of the level of smartphone penetration. Certainly in the UK now, it's about 50% and rising exponentially. Tablet devices have probably been the fastest growing consumer device that there's ever been, and that's continuing to grow exponentially. And for all the reasons that we've talked about, the fact that it's essentially linking the user with a supercomputer in the palm of their hand wherever they are in the world 24 hours a day. It offers immense benefit to the consumer and a fantastic opportunity for banks and other organisations to be able to communicate, market, and offer higher levels of customer service to their consumers than they've ever done before. So I think banks only have to look at the data to understand just how important mobile devices, smartphones, tablets are going to become now and in the future.
Long gone are those days where we'd shuffle along to the high street bank with all our paper, really. I mean, it's never, it's not going to go back, is it?
I mean, as I said to you before, again, it varies from bank to bank, but the bank will know best just how often their customers go into the banking hall. And there'll always be customers that would prefer to still do their banking that way, but my view is that figure is only going to decline. And of course the other factor there is that do customers go into the bank because they want to go into the bank, or do they go into the bank because they have to, because there is no viable alternative via the PC or through mobile devices? So that begs a question about whether banks are actually investing sufficiently in their digital propositions to enable their customers to be able to do that kind of thing. If you think, online banking's been around for some 12 years now, 12 years ago, few people had heard of Google, nobody had heard of Facebook, nobody had an iPhone or an iPad or anything like that. The world has moved on tremendously in the last 12 years or so, and yet many banks are still wrestling with the concept of a single customer view and straight-through processing, which why it brought a smile to my face when Daoud was saying that banks shouldn't rush into things. I think that's the one thing that banks don't do is rush into things. They typically move at glacial speed, and they need to think about that in terms of how they evolve their strategy.
Excellent, thank you. So let's move to another poll. We want to know what you're thinking. So you'll be able to see the question on the right-hand side of your screen. You can also vote there. So here is that second question. Which is more useful for consumers? Is it mobile-optimised website or banking app? And we will look at the results with our panellists in just a few minutes' time. Now, with new mobile platforms, the phenomenon of the app has emerged, and banks have been keen to develop apps as both banking tools and relationship builders. Creating a good app isn't easy, though, as I'm sure Ian's going to tell us. So, Ian, what's your view on this? How difficult is it to create an app, and what are the key challenges?
Well, it's not difficult to create apps, but again, I think it's not around whether it's an app or whether it's a mobile website. It's around again, what is the strategy of the bank, and to what degree is it satisfying a customer need? And there are some great banking apps available now in the UK and overseas. The vast majority of them are very much directed towards service, being able to do your routine banking transactions and getting real-time messages about your balances and whether you're overdrawn and so on and so forth. And those apps are really great. And if that's part of your strategy and that's what your customers want, then fine. But I think...
Is it a bigger benefit for the bank or the customer?
Well, I think it's beneficial to both. I mean, obviously, we are in the era of consumer power. They want to have a particular close understanding of what their financial services are, and mobile devices enable them to do that. And obviously, it's a big advantage to the banks, not only because they view it as being good customer service, but it has massive cost-saving implications as well in terms of substitute transactions from more expensive channels. So it's beneficial from that point of view. But then it's just a case of coming back to the point that I mentioned earlier about what's the next stage in development of digital channels. And I think this is where it's around helping customers to make informed decisions about what other products and services that they want to do. And apps don't really satisfy that requirement. And I think that's why banks need to think about how they create mobile optimized websites, because I think that makes it a more versatile proposition in not just addressing the service and transactional side of banking, but also in terms of how they're offering valuable information and the ability to buy products that satisfy the customer needs.
Jason, how would you say, what is the bearing for PFM in the app sort of world?
Well, the majority of our banking customers who deploy PFM will end up deploying a mobile PFM solution, whether that's a web-based PFM solution you can access on your phone, or whether it's an app that you download and stick on your mobile phone. We see it being very powerful. So a lot of the services that go live, we're seeing that the adoption and registering and using that service is a lot higher when they use the mobile piece rather than the online piece. And that's straight through from less so in banking, but more so in the independent companies. So you'll come across services out there which just provide mobile solutions that enable you to manage your finances. But if you then look at what PFM can give you on the mobile device, is not only can you have a lot of dead time, and that's when you can pick up your phone, you pick up your device, you can start looking at your finances, you can see things about your money that's of interest. But if you then combine that with things like location-based services, vouchers, for example, it's not that difficult for a bank to create a partnership with a voucher type company, and then based upon the transactional data that you have, based upon where you are and what the bank knows about you, you can offer them things that can save them money. Again, we talked about things that benefit the consumer. Offer them things based on where they are, and more importantly, about the data they spend. That's quite powerful.
Thanks, Jason. Right, let's take a look at the results of the second poll. Here's a reminder of the question that we asked, and the second question was, which is a more useful digital tool for consumers? Is it the mobile optimised website or the banking app? This is quite an interesting result. 75% favoured the app, 25% favoured the mobile optimised website. Any reaction to that, Justine? What do you think? Are you surprised?
I'm not surprised by the response, because I think that's the typical view that we sort of see. But I am inclined actually to agree with Ian actually in that there is a huge opportunity for mobile and tablet optimised sites to take a better advantage of the opportunity that exists beyond servicing. So from my perspective, our strategy within HSBC has been to focus on delivering a banking service, and we're seeing that we're delivering that through an app-based proposition, but that's a very, very specific need that it is satisfying, and we are acutely aware of the implications of implementing a walled garden in that sense of a subset of functionality, the stuff that isn't in that walled garden. And if we see people choosing to use the mobile device as a preference, then that potentially is something that we need to worry about. So I understand I understand the result, and I think within the technology community there's a purist view about apps versus optimised web as well, because actually optimised web is sort of harder to put your arms around and think about and design and execute. But I'm with Ian. I think we need to play in both spaces.
Daoud, does it chime with your research, this result?
Yes, I mean, I think just to say a word in favour of the apps, and maybe speaking from the consumer viewpoint, I think from the consumer side of things, they tend to have happier experiences with apps than with mobile or internet. I think that the latter can sometimes appear rather sort of clunky and rather user-friendly, whereas apps offer, on the face of it, at least a much smoother experience. And I think also, we were talking earlier about segmentation. I think apps lends itself to that strategy that they can come up with apps for we can have an app aimed at high net worth individuals with maybe portfolio management capabilities, or can have an app aimed at the student market which will provide offers and discounts on restaurants and pubs and so on. So I think there is a role for apps within the sphere, within the mobile sphere.
Okay, thank you very much, Daoud. Let's talk now more about social media and the impact it's having on digital banking and the customer experience. We've already touched on Foursquare and how it can be used by FS organisations to offer benefits to customers. Social media offers customers a voice, and banks are listening, engaging with their customers on it. It's cheap to use, and all your customers are hanging out there. So it's hard to see why banks wouldn't embrace it. However, many FS companies have been wary of becoming too involved in social media, not having the expertise, not seeing the ROI, or just being wary of the public debate and negative comments generated. So, Justine, what's your take on social media? First Direct are cited most frequently as the best banking operator in the social media space. So I guess you should probably give us an insight into why. Why have you been so successful? Why did it all go right?
Well, I guess, if I'm just speaking from a purely First Direct perspective, because of course we also offer a social media interaction for HSBC as well. I mean, First Direct as a brand has never been frightened of asking its customers for their opinions. And what First Direct has is, an excellent pedigree and, a proven track record in amazing customer service. So, we've already, the level of rapport that exists between First Direct customers and the call centre, for example, is best in market. What we've done within First Direct is take that a step further. So we've actually taken, the rapport that we know exists between our customers, between First Direct customers and the brand, and we've sort of moved that into a new communication channel. So we've drawn on all of the the cultural philosophy that exists at First Direct, the excellent that people that actually work the phones. We've actually implemented that in a an area that has technical expertise, and the combination of those three things, plus not having a fear of talking to customers, means that customers have perceived that in a very, very positive light. And I guess unlike some of our competitors' experience, we do actually see a balance between the good and the negative. So customers are not frightened of telling us if they don't like something, but at the same time they'll tell First Direct if there's something that they do like. So I think actually that in itself fuels a faith that it's the right way to go. And actually off the back of that, that's exactly what HSBC have done.
Is that the view of all of you? Is that your experience? Yeah, briefly, unfortunately, because we're running out of time. No, okay.
Well, social media is here to stay, and whether a bank likes it or not, its brand, its products, its services are being talked about in the social community. So, again, if banks are truly professing to be customer focused, then it would be folly to ignore what's being talked about within the community, and even if they're only reactively listening to what they're saying, then they absolutely need to do that. I guess the challenge is that, again, it's around setting the strategy. So does a banking organisation want to get involved in social media from a customer service perspective, from a brand management perspective, a PR perspective, from a product development perspective, or a sales perspective, or all of those things? So that's the starting point, defining what your strategy is, and then assigning ownership within the organisation, because with all of those different functions being represented in terms of the opportunities, who's actually going to own this, and who's going to make sure that the bank does it right? Because one thing's for certain is if they dabble in social media and get it wrong, it's going to backfire massively. So it's all around setting the right strategy, giving clear senior ownership in the organisation, and making sure you've got clear KPIs so that you can measure the impact of social media, whatever that strategy might be.
Excellent. Jason?
Just quickly on that, I've just cited two customer examples where they've used social media with PFM that's worked really well. One is that and Yodlee creates these tools. It's where you can view how much you spend on something, so let's say clothing, and then you can compare yourself to your peers, and maybe you compare yourself to people that are in the, specific to you, so same age group, same financial position. But we're seeing that being taken up a lot. And the other aspect is actually, we talked about FinApps earlier on widgets, actually been at the bank allowing you to take an element of that and post that somewhere else, like so for iGoogle or Facebook, where I can show other people how well I'm doing to a savings goal. And that's a great way of seeing social media being wrapped up around PFM tools.
Excellent. Daoud, do you want to have a quick word on this one as well? I'd like to bring you in.
I think up until maybe a couple of years ago, banks were viewing social media almost as a solution in search of a problem. They were saying, let's get on Facebook, let's get on Twitter, and then what do we do now that we are on there? I think now they're moving away from a sort of very vague concept of customer engagement to one of customer participation. And I would cite First Direct as being a good example of this, what they're doing in terms of crowdsourcing with product development and such like. And I think we are seeing areas in terms of PFM, social savings is also starting to take off in America now. So we are starting to see some definite consumer applications which will provide demonstrable benefits for the market.
Fascinating. Thanks very much. Now, let's get your input. Throughout the webinar, we've been asking you to send in your questions and comments, both on the webpage and also through Twitter, using the hashtag CEFS. Let's now have a look at those and get the panellists' feedback. Firstly, we've got one from Woo-Sung Kim at PwC, who asks, what are the emerging new technologies that will be applicable in banking? Well, we've kind of answered this to a certain extent. And will customers pay for them? Cost, I think that's an interesting issue. I mean, is it going to cost us all a lot more to bank this way?
Yeah, and I know why PwC are asking this question, because a few months ago they came out with a report saying that consumers would be willing to pay a nominal fee for certain added value services. The ex-market researcher says, let's treat those results with a degree of caution. I think sometimes what people say they will do and what they actually do in practice are two very different things. So My feeling is at the moment people are used to the idea of free in credit banking. They're used to having free access to mobile and online services. And I think unless we're talking about, for example, a service aimed at, let's say, the high net worth or mass affluent market, it's going to be very difficult to persuade consumers to pay for these services. Having said that, this morning we did see Andrew Bailey come out saying, well, you know, free banking may be coming to an end if he has anything to do with it, and that could soften up, you know, the consumer towards paying for these services.
Okay, thank you. We've got a question here from Alistair Wellham at Virgin Money. He says, who do you believe will be the most surprising new, not existing entrant into the banking sector in the next 5 years? Who wants to take that one? Is that you, Justine, do you think?
I don't want to take that one.
You don't want to take that one? Who's going to pitch in? Have you got a view on that one, Ian? Do you have any inside knowledge?
I have not got any inside knowledge. It's difficult to say. I mean, I think you know, it is obviously very difficult to do banking very, very well. But having said that, you know, if there is an organisation that's got a strong brand, is highly trusted amongst its customers, and is able to, you know, listen to those customers to provide a banking proposition which you know, the customer feels is of considerable value and is clearly differentiated from what is in existence currently within the marketplace, then I see no reason why we can't get a new entrant. I mean, I guess you know, the one thing that existing banks need to be mindful of is that there might be an organisation that comes along to fill that space in some shape or form, and therefore they need to think about how they remain innovative or become innovative in some instances, and try and keep one step ahead of their competition. So, for example, you know, I think I'm right in saying that PayPal are now the largest payments provider globally, and yet again 10 years ago they didn't exist. So, you know, things can change. You know, we've seen it. You know, you talked about the retail environment earlier. You know, there are big brand names that have dominated the high street for the last 100 years that no longer exist because of what's happened within the digital environment. So who knows who might come along, but you know, one thing is for certain is that the existing banks cannot rest on their laurels. They cannot you know, sort of rely upon inertia and apathy, because someone might come along and completely shake up their marketplace.
Okay. Well, we've had a question in from... Sorry, Jason, did you want to say something?
I was only just going to finish off on that, saying it's interesting that comes from Virgin Money, because I think Virgin Money and Tesco Bank have the potential to be that next big company that comes into the banking sector. If they get it right and they put the right tools online, you know, do something different that the majority of the banks aren't doing, I think, you know, banks like that, they have the right brand, and they have a clean whiteboard to start from and put innovative tools online, then I think they could be the next big thing.
Excellent. We've got a question here from Alex Salisbury, and he asks, or she possibly, what are the critical factors for getting design right? Do you have a view on that, Jason?
Justine's probably better to answer from a banking perspective. I mean, I can answer from a PFM perspective. Sure. And when we talk to people, again, it boils down to the same old things. It needs to be easy to use, not complicated, and it needs to be able to be accessible via multiple channels. I mean, you can't design something and say, that's the channel. It needs to, you design something so it's accessible from any type of device.
Justine, what's your take on that? About
well,
design?
you know, I'd agree, but I agree, and you know, you need to involve the customer as well. You know, it's you know, Ian's mentioned it a number of times. It's about tapping it, really understanding what that customer need is, and then translating that into a channel experience that's, you know, I keep saying it, easy, simple, reassuring, relevant. I think the one watch out, and I think, you know, anyone who works in banking or anyone who works with technology would acknowledge, is that you know, as when you start out on a particular initiative, you start with an ideal design. As you look to transition that into a technology solution, there are often, you know, compromises that you need to make. And I think from my perspective, you know, user-centered design as a methodology is really powerful, in that it helps you really understand what things you need to fight for, what things you need to keep, what challenges you need to, what technical obstacles you need to overcome, in order that when you actually implement that channel experience, you are actually maximising, you know, the chances of customers using it continuing to using it and reporting that they're delighted with it.
Okay, a final brief word from you, Daoud,
Yeah,
on that.
the risk of labouring the point that I've made throughout the last hour, I think it just comes down to getting the user experience just absolutely spot on. I think just being able to do things with as few clicks as possible, just making the process of setting up new payees, for example, as painless as possible. You know, just speaking as a consumer myself, I've often had huge difficulties trying to do that. So it's just making sure that, yeah, in involving the user, as Justine has said, making sure the user is involved at every stage of the development process to make sure that it truly represents the, you know, fulfills the needs and requirements of consumers.
So, thank you very much. Well, it's been a fascinating webinar and discussion. We hope you've all enjoyed the past hour. We'd really appreciate your feedback. A short evaluation form can be found at the bottom of your screen if you scroll down. Please do fill it in so that we can take all feedback into consideration for future webinars. Thank you also to everyone who sent in questions. Our apologies that we haven't had time to answer them all. Clearly, digital banking and the customer experience is a rich topic at the moment, and there are exciting times ahead with lots of scope for innovation. As we continue talking about this over the coming weeks, we hope you'll join us at some of our retail banking conferences, including the Future of Mobile Banking, which features senior speakers from Lloyds Banking Group, Barclays, Standard Chartered and Banco Sabadell. You can also find out more on our website, which is www.marketforceeu.com. Thanks to the panel and to Yodlee for supporting today's webinar, and of course to you for watching. We hope to see you at our next event. Bye-bye.